According to Dr. Andrew Huberman, you can quit any addiction in 14 to 30 days. In this video, I'll break down the science and meaning of addiction and how to overcome it. Dopamine is a neuromodulator that, to put it simply, changes the electrical activity of other nerve cells. Your dopamine levels can spike up because of numerous things, such as cold shower and food. After peaking, your dopamine levels drop down to what scientists call baseline. Baseline is like your dopamine barrel that has all your natural dopamine in it. At the same way your dopamine can go up, it can also go down, so below the baseline. Dr. Gillet uses wave pool as an analogy to dopamine. So just like in a wave pool, some waves are gentle and tame, but then others are huge and high volume. And if the volume is high enough, some water gets splashed out of the pool, causing baseline of the water to lower. This is why when you, for an example, start using a new high dopamine drug, you only need small doses to get high, but when time goes on, you need more and more to get the same reaction. A common misunderstanding about dopamine is that your dopamine levels go up once you fulfill the desire. Now that is indeed true, but it doesn't cause the highest raise in dopamine. Your dopamine levels raise the most when you start to crave something. Let me demonstrate this for you. If you are hungry and you start to crave a high dopamine food like hamburger, you actually get a spike of dopamine when you are planning to eat the hamburger. Once you eat the hamburger, your dopamine levels can go up, but not as much as the initial craving spiked them. When you start to think of something small, like an hamburger, that causes a short spike in your dopamine, and once that spike goes down, your dopamine levels go below your baseline. And now that drop below baseline is what causes you to go get that hamburger. You just understand that a desire for something causes a dopamine spike and then a drop after that spike, and that drop causes you to be more likely to go and get that thing. If you can understand that, continue watching. If not, play the last minute or so back till you comprehend it. Wikipedia defines addiction as neuropsychological disorder characterized by a persistent and intense urge to use a drug or engage in a behavior that produces natural reward, despite substantial harm and other negative consequences. Let's use cocaine as an example. Using cocaine causes your dopamine levels to raise rapidly and for quite some time. Now, as you learned earlier, after a spike in dopamine, there is a drop that goes below the baseline. What I didn't mention earlier is that the bigger the spike, the bigger the drop, meaning that a drug like cocaine causes a big drop under your normal baseline, and as you learned earlier, the drop is the trigger for wanting more. That's why drugs and other high dopamine actions like porn and video games are so addictive. Feeling so good and then feeling horrible desiring more make it very easy to relapse again and again. And that's not even the worst thing. Eventually, when you use substances like drugs or video games or anything that can be addictive, the increase in dopamine gets progressively lower every time, and if that wasn't bad enough, at the same time the drop below the baseline gets lower and lower. So the same amount that used to make you feel so good when you first started it, now doesn't even stimulate you the same way, and you feel even worse after it. This can cause a state called dopamine deficit, where only that one thing brings any joy into your life. Now, when being interviewed by Andrew Huberman, Dr. Lembke, MD, chief of the Stanford Addiction Medicine Dual Diagnosis Clinic at the Stanford University School of Medicine, stated that to her clinical experience, it takes around 30 days of total absence of the cause of addiction, whether it is a person, habit or substance, to reset neurological pathways for dopamine. No, I know that most of you were waiting for some kind of magic trick to quit addiction, but you just have to try your absolute hardest to keep yourself away from the drug. Lock yourself to your house if you have to. 2 weeks is generally the amount of time it takes to start to feel good, and those first 10 to 14 days can be very depressive and might have numerous other problems, but if you just get past that point, it gets better. Now, if you didn't already click off the video, there is a few reasons why people relapse, and this can happen after years of being clean from said substance. Dr. Lembke gave an amazing analogy. Take a listen.
20 years of seeing these patients, and of course addiction is a spectrum disease, sure, right? And so you've got the severe end of things. Imagine that you had an itch somewhere on your body, okay? And it was, we've all had that, like, whatever the source, it was super, super itchy. You can go for, if you really focus, you could go for a pretty good amount of time not scratching it. But the moment you stopped focusing on not scratching it, you would scratch it. And maybe you do it while you were asleep, right? And that is what happens to people with severe addiction. That balance is essentially broken. Homeostasis does not get restored despite sustained abstinence. They're living with that constant specter of that pull. It never goes away. So let me say there are lots of people with addiction for whom that does go away, and it goes away at 4 weeks for many of them. But in severe cases, that's always there and it's lingering. And it's the moment when they're not focusing on not using, it's like a reflex. They fall back into it. It's not purposeful. It's not because they want to get high. It's not because they value using drugs more than they do their family. None of that. It's that really they cannot not do it when given the opportunity and that moment when they're not thinking about it. Does that make sense?
That's a great description.
And that's it. If you found this video helpful, please consider like and subscribing and check out the videos on the screen.